All right, let's get into this. We're going to look at a really fascinating story about what happens when a seemingly airtight logical argument goes head to head with some deeply, deeply held beliefs. It's a case study of a confrontation where logic tried to find a little bit of common ground, and, well, the systems it challenged reacted in a way that nobody saw coming. So picture this. You're in a public plaza. There are two groups, and they're just locked in this never-ending debate. You've got the believers on one side, making their case for faith, and on the other, the disbelievers, who are just dismantling every point, demanding evidence. The arguments are so tired, so rehearsed, that the story literally calls it a ritual. It's not a discussion, it's a performance. And here's the thing, neither side is there to learn. Not really. The point isn't to discover some new truth. It's all about rehearsing their positions, flexing their intellectual muscles. It's a complete and total stalemate. Now look at how this plays out. It's a perfect loop. Believers talk about faith, and the disbelievers say, that's not evidence. Believers bring up a personal experience, and the disbelievers correctly point out, well, I can't verify that. You see, it's this circular conversation where every single point has a canned response ready to go. There's just no way in and no way out. But then someone new shows up. And this guy, he isn't listening to pick a team. He's not waiting for his turn to talk. He's listening for something else, something specific inside all that noise. Kind of like how a doctor listens to a patient's chest. And his presence just completely changes the entire dynamic of the scene. So instead of attacking one side or the other, the stranger starts to build something completely new. He begins laying down a foundation based on pure logic. A foundation that, and this is so important, both sides have to agree on. He kicks things off with a couple of quick, simple questions. He's not asking about God or scripture or faith. He's just asking about the basic properties of belief versus truth. And the whole group agrees pretty easily. I mean, of course, if something is proven to be false, if truth slams a door in your face, you can't just believe that door open again. Then he just keeps going, building on this hierarchy that everybody on both sides already understands. Yep, again, everyone's on board. A hard fact can totally shatter a belief you've held your entire life. Truth, they agree, is more powerful. And this right here is the masterstroke. He asks them if there's anything else, any other concept at all that has this ultimate, irreversible power. And just like that, look what he's done. In just a handful of questions, the stranger has gotten believers and disbelievers to agree on a working definition of truth. It's not even about what is true. It's about how truth functions. And establishing that common ground, well, that changes everything. Okay, so now that the foundation is set, the stranger takes this logic they all just agreed on, and he applies it directly to the believer's own source material. This is where things get really, really clever. He pulls out a quote from the book of Revelation. Now listen to that phrasing. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. That's the exact definition of truth they all just agreed to. He's showing them that their own book is making a claim that can only be fulfilled by an act of absolute demonstrable truth, not just by belief. To make this crystal clear, he uses this simple metaphor. A real proof can't just be a claim you make. It has to be a unique action that proves itself. So it's not about just saying you have the key, it's about being the only one in the world who can actually walk up to the lock and turn it. That action, that unique ability, is the evidence. This lays out the core of his entire argument so perfectly. He compares the lock and key passage to the claim of giving sight to the blind, and he shows that logically, they're the exact same structure. For either of those claims to hold up, based on the rules everyone just agreed to, the result has to be real. It can't just be a feeling or a personal belief. It has to be a demonstrable, irreversible act of truth. The text, by its own internal logic, demands a real-world proof. And here we go. This is the climax. The logical trap has been sprung. But instead of actually thinking about the idea, what do the groups do? They turn the logic on the stranger himself. And their belief systems, they perform this immediate, defensive, emergency reboot. Suddenly, it's not an abstract argument anymore. It becomes personal. The believer hears the logical conclusion that someone has to be able to perform the action and interprets it as a direct personal claim from the stranger. The idea becomes a threat. And there it is. The first defense mechanism kicks in. The believer doesn't even try to refute the logic. He just categorizes it. He labels it blasphemy, which lets him shove the entire argument into a box where he doesn't have to think about it anymore. His worldview is safe again. Now, the disbeliever has her own defense mechanism, and it's just as fast. She actually admits the reasoning was sound, but, because it was applied to the Bible, what she considers a fictional framework, the only possible outcome is delusion. So she, too, instantly recategorizes the whole event to fit what she already believes. And this is the great irony of the whole story. These two groups who couldn't agree on anything all day suddenly find themselves on the same side. They formed this weird, temporary alliance to face away from the stranger's logic. They didn't disprove his point, they just reframed it as either a religious error or a psychological one. And in doing so, they both got to go home feeling like they were right all along. So what's the big takeaway from all this? The story gives us this really powerful insight into how our own minds work to protect themselves when they're challenged. You see, after they dismissed the stranger's argument, both the believer and the disbeliever felt this wave of relief, of clarity. They felt like their own positions were stronger and more correct than ever. But what they were actually seeing, as the narrator so brilliantly puts it, was just a reflection of their own beliefs staring back at them. And that is the absolute key to this whole thing. When our deepest beliefs get challenged and we manage to fight off that new information, it doesn't feel like we're being defensive. It doesn't feel like we're being closed-minded. It feels like we just successfully defended the truth. It feels like we're seeing things more clearly than ever. So this whole story just leaves us with this one really potent question we should probably ask ourselves. The stranger presented a perfectly logical key, but neither side was willing to even see if it fit the lock. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What logical keys might we be ignoring in our own lives just because we're a little bit afraid of what doors they might open?